Tonight on News 5 Live, former Prime Minister Barrow emerges. He appears in court as the attorney for Ian Haylock in the case against the Prime Minister and Attorney General's ministries. KHMH charging patients for the use of PPEs. We'll tell you why. A man accidentally shoots himself in Stan Creek. Municipals are 1 month away, and we'll show you the mayoral hopefuls. And the national women's football team has a new coach. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
Currently, we're using Smart Elite Vibe calling plan.
Welcome to News 5 Live for Wednesday, February 3rd. I am Marlene Cuellar. Senior Customs Officer Ian Haylock is suing Prime Minister John Briceño and challenging Estelle Leslie's appointment as Comptroller of Customs. Haylock strongly believes that he was overlooked and deserves the post based on seniority and experience. In a 3.5-hour virtual session this afternoon, Haylock was represented by former Prime Minister Dean Barrow, who we saw for the first time since he stepped away from political life, in action in the courtroom. Former Senate President Darrell Bradley is also representing Haylock. The government was represented by Crown Counsel Jorge Matas and Assistant Solicitor General Samantha Matute Tucker. The court heard two issues today: the claimant's application for leave for judicial review and a request for an interim injunction. For context, we note that before Leslie was appointed to the post, the Office of the Comptroller of Customs was made to fall under 107 of the Belize Constitution. This gave the Prime Minister, through the Governor General, the ability to appoint the Comptroller of Customs. However, consultations with the Public Services Commission needed to be carried out. But Barrow argued in court today that no genuine consultation was had. Barrow contended that the government breached Section 107 of the Constitution since the commissioner was never adequately consulted and never given sufficient time to respond. However, Matute Tucker informed the court that the Prime Minister had sent a letter to the Public Service Commission on December 24, 2020, and requested a response no later than December 29th. The letter went unanswered, but Barrow argued that the request for consultation was sent over the Christmas holiday weekend. The commissioner members most likely did not get the letter. In her rebuttal, Matute Tucker argued that the post of Comptroller of Customs and Excise was of urgent national importance. Its continued function was to ensure that 45% of the government's revenue was not affected. The claimant asks for an interim injunction to be placed on the Comptroller's office until the matter is fully ventilated and decided by the court. This means that Leslie's hands to make decisions and carry out her functions will be tied. In her defense, her attorney, Senior Counsel Andrew Marshallek, informed the court of the ouster clause, which he described as a complete defense against the challenge being brought forward. Marshallek argued that to seek to challenge them through the judicial review or to allow them to be challenged would be to ignore Section 34 of the Belize Constitution. As such, the claimant does not have an arguable case. Bradley argued that the balance of convenience is to leave the position open until the court decides. If there is a failure on the government's part by adhering to the Constitution, then the appointment should be void. Justice James will hand down a written judgment on Tuesday, February 9th. Several patients who've accessed the healthcare system to treat COVID-19 infections are up in arms over the cost of PPEs being tacked onto their bills. Personal protective equipment, as they're otherwise known, are a staple in the medical profession, especially during the pandemic. Carl Houston Memorial Hospital has come under fire recently for charging an additional $200 to replace PPEs that are being used during the treatment and care of COVID patients. The constant criticism has prompted officials at the hospital to come forward with an explanation for the surcharge. News 5's Isani Caetano reports.
The use of personal protective equipment, PPE, is essential in preventing the transmission of the pathogen that causes COVID-19, particularly in a hospital setting. The gear is primarily worn by members of staff who administer care to persons afflicted with the illness. At the Carl Houston Memorial Hospital, PPEs are acquired by procurement and donation, but the cost of replacement is borne by the patient.
I just want to be clear and to educate the public a little as it relates to the personal protective equipment. The charges is shown on the bill as a day charge for the PPEs. And basically what that means for us, a day charge is a 24-hour coverage in the hospital, no, for patients that are admitted.
On hand to provide the attention and treatment that is required is a patient care assistant who dons protective clothing, gloves, masks, and goggles for the better part of an entire shift.
It's hot. The suit is really hot, but it's fulfilling to help the nurses with the patients Sometimes, you still get that fulfillment even if the patients meet their demise, because you know that you help the nurses do everything that we needed to do to get that patient to where they were before, that happened.
While PPEs do serve their purpose in safeguarding the wearer's body from certain hazards within the scope of occupational safety and health, they do come at a cost. That price tag has been an area of concern for those who access KHMA's services and have incurred an additional fee. Chief Executive Officer Michelle Hoare explains the shift system and how PPEs are used.
Each 24-hour is divided into two 12-hour shifts. And by standard, we have changes for PPEs, at least 3 changes per shift. Now, when we talk about PPEs, we are talking about a kit that is prepared before the staff member actually goes into the unit. A kit is prepared. In that kit, it comprises or it includes a full body suit with the hood, a goggles, N95, mask, 2 pairs of gloves, boots, right? So it's a kit that is prepared, and the staff member would pull a kit.
For Donisha Castillo, a patient care assistant, wearing a PPE has taken some getting used to because it is confining. She started wearing them 10 months ago and has become a necessary part of her daily attire.
I just try to take in deep breaths and just do what I have to do, and once I'm done, I just come out of it. But we don't stay in it that long, just a great period of time, but we get used to it.
I gather that once you have donned your PPEs, using the facilities out of the question.
No, yeah, you can't use the bathroom. You can't use the bathroom until you're finished. So what we try to do is we go to the bathroom before we put on the suit.
During the course of a hospital stay, a patient may be attended to by multiple persons, each wearing a PPE. Those are all factored into the total expense.
It's not even 2 persons involved in your care. Sometimes it'll be 4 or 5 different individuals, and so when you multiply that by 4 times that you have to change in and out of the suits for the day, at least for 5 persons taking care of you, then that's where you see PPE as a cost comes up. So it's certainly not the cost of a mask, first of all.
The cost, according to CEO Hoare, is in fact calculated based on the number of changes during the 24-hour cycle.
The charges really is for actually 6 kits in a 24-hour, 6 changes per staff in a 24-hour period, right? Now when you break down the price per PPE that is used, look at $200 a day as is shown on the bill, and you break it down by the item that is included in the kit, we're looking at something like $6 and something cents per item.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
There are 259 active cases of the coronavirus spread across the country as the number of confirmed cases is nearing the 12,000 mark. There are 306 deaths recorded since March 2020, of which 201 are men and the remaining 105 are women. 11,413 persons have recovered. The Belize and the Cayo districts are still reporting the highest numbers of positive cases, with a higher concentration in urban areas such as Belize City and Belmopan. With the relaxation of quarantine regulations, Acting Director of Health Services Dr. Melissa Diaz-Musa says that the Ministry of Health and Wellness said that people must still be vigilant.
Even though things have been going well, the public health measures have been working and people have been taking on some responsibility, now is really not the time for us to give up on practicing these public health measures. Now is the time for us to ensure that we increase the measures, that we educate our friends and family, and that we protect our vulnerable. So we are optimistic but very cautious about it. We still have almost 300 active cases. There is that can very easily turn into a lot more if the public health measures are not taken seriously. And we are definitely not out of the woods, and it can lead to a third wave if we let our guards down.
A third wave is possible, especially with the new COVID variants detected in the region. The UK variant has been identified in Mexico. Meanwhile, in Belize, we're still awaiting results from samples sent to Baylor College and the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, to determine if any of the new variants are in the country. So when can we expect those results? Dr. Diaz-Musa says that it will take another week.
In Belize, we can't, and in many countries, the genome sequencing cannot be done.
Yes.
There's a lot of different equipment and specialized equipment to do the genome sequencing. So as I had mentioned before, we had partnered with Baylor College in Houston. So they do have about 300 of our swabs at this point. And CARPHA also has 10 of our swabs, and that's the quota that they give different countries different quotas, and Belize has been given 10 swabs a month. So we've kept in constant contact with Baylor, and they are in the process of doing the genome sequencing, but they have asked us to give them another week or so in order for us to get some of the preliminary results from the swabs that they currently have. So it's just waiting to hear.
When it comes to receiving vaccines via the COVAX facility, Dr. Diaz-Musa says that Belize is to get 30% of its population's worth, which is roughly 120,000. In the first 3 shipments, 3% of the AstraZeneca vaccine is expected to arrive in Belize sometime between the end of March and the first week in April. After the break, the countdown is on. Municipal elections is 1 month away, and we'll give you a sneak peek at some of the confirmed slates.
Contraband is illegal importation
The next round of municipal elections is exactly 1 month away. And while it doesn't normally attract the level of campaign fanfare and prominence as the general elections, these local elections are important as they directly impact the quality of life of those who live in urban areas. According to the Elections and Boundaries Department, as of December 2020, there are 92,838 registered voters across the 9 municipalities. But registration was completed on January 25th, so that number is expected to increase. In the 2018 municipal elections, there were 114,574 registered voters, which put the December 2020 count short of 21,736 registered voters. This is a result of the cleaning up of the voters' list during the re-registration process. In the 2018 municipal elections, some 65,569 voters went to the polls. That's a 57.23% voter turnout. It's left to be seen if the pandemic will have any bearing at all on this year's voter turnout. The UDP has named all its candidates, and the PUP still has 2 remaining slates to be named in the coming days. Here's a look at the slates that have already been published.
The 2021 municipal election is 1 month away. It's an important election for many reasons. For voters in the cities and towns, there are real consequences because they're selecting the candidates who will make important decisions and implement projects that range from infrastructure to access to public spaces, social programs, and other development projects. So, these are concerns that should be at the forefront of the voters' mind as they prepare to head to the polls to select their municipal leaders on March 3rd. In the 2018 municipal elections, the People's United Party won 3 full councils in Belize City, Orange Walk Town, and Corozal Town, and they picked up 1 councillor seat in Dangriga on a majority-red council. So in 2021, will the PUP's massive success at the polls back in November translate to wins across the country for their municipal teams? Or will voters go to the polls to send a message to the ruling party less than 4 months after they've been elected? It's left to be seen on March 3rd, but both political parties are fielding slates to contest this election. In Belize City, the current PUP mayor is contesting his seat once again. Mayor Bernard Wagner was endorsed as the PUP's candidate, and he will face off with newcomer to electoral politics and media personality Urson Picard for the United Democratic Party. Wagner's slate of 10 councillors includes returning councillors Micah Goodin, Albert Vaughn, and Alan Pollard, and also introduces new faces to local politics like cyclist Kaya Katus and former president of the Chinese Association Edmund Kwan. Picard's slate is made up of mostly newcomers, a sprinkle of familiar faces like Dr. Elaine Gonzalez and Kenny Morgan. The new UDP councillor candidates in Belize City include former journalist Shane Williams and martial arts instructor Leon Guild. In Belmopan, it will be educator versus educator for the mayoral seat run. Former councillor turned mayoral candidate Jackie Burns is leading the UDP slate in the capital city. Burns, an educator by profession, has 6 councillor candidates, which include returning councillors, former senior superintendent of police Louise Willis and Paul Chun, as well as new faces to the political scene in Belmopan, such as Victor Oriana and Leslie Zelaya. Burns' slate will contest the election against longtime teacher Sharon Palacio for the PUP. Palacio is a well-known community activist known for her work in arts and culture, and also has a slate of several newcomers, but who are well known in Belmopan, which includes radio correspondent Pauline Sabranes-Tillit, nurse Hope Amari, and communications manager Nikki Agustin. In the town of Benque Viejo del Carmen, the PUP slate is headed by mayoral candidate Jorge Rosales, while the UDP is being represented by mayoral hopeful Miguel Guerra. In San Ignacio and Santa Elena, Mayor Earl Trapp is running for the UDP to defend his seat against mayoral candidate Ramon Quiroz of the PUP. In Corozal, Rigo Veas is the incumbent, and he will defend his seat for the PUP against the UDP's mayoral hopeful, Roger Arana. In San Pedro, pilot Wally Nunes is running as the PUP's mayoral candidate, who is hoping to unseat the UDP, who's been in the municipal power for 6 terms. Nunes is going up against UDP's mayoral candidate, Ruben Gonzalez. In Orange Walk Town, Ladrick Shepherd, a councillor and the current PUP town council and well-known champion of sports in the town, is hoping that voters will elect him to be the next mayor and keep a blue town council. The UDP's candidate is Orlando Castillo. In Dangriga, the UDP's incumbent, Mayor Francis Humphreys, is defending his seat. The PUP will elect its mayoral candidate this coming weekend for the culture capital. And the PUP will host a convention in Punta Gorda this town to decide who will run against the UDP's Hansel Warrior for mayor. Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
A new Elections and Boundaries Commission held its inaugural meeting today, despite its members not being formally sworn into office. As we reported on Tuesday, the Elections and Boundaries Commission is being chaired by Senior Counsel Oscar Sabido, who replaces fellow attorney Esteban Pereira in that post. Joining him as members of the newly formed commission are Orlando Espat, Conrad Lewis, Philippa Griffith Bailey, and Alberto August. Chairman Sabido and members Espat and Lewis are appointed on the advice of Prime Minister John Briceño, while August is appointed on the advice of opposition leader Patrick Faber. The composition of a new Elections and Boundaries Commission comes a few short weeks ahead of the March 3rd municipal elections. 2 Corozaleños were busted with a stash of drugs at a checkpoint on Monday evening. Around 5 o'clock, cops at the Manatee Lookout stopped a pickup truck with Orange Walk license plate driven by Herman Friesen of Little Belize and passenger Gerardo Lino of Progreso Village. The police officers searched the vehicle and discovered 1,132 grams of weed. The packets were found inside the panel of the passenger door. Police later searched Friesen's phone case, where they found 1.5 grams of cocaine. Around 1:30 this morning, police searched Friesen's house at Camp 28 in Little Belize and found 8 transparent plastic bags with 212 grams of weed and a plastic bottle with 2 packets of 1.2 grams of cocaine. Both Friesen and Lino were charged with 2 counts of possession of controlled drugs with intent to supply to another. Friesen was slapped with 3 additional counts of possession of controlled drugs with intent to supply to another. Police have reported that a man died by shooting himself in what they call an accidental death. It was not a case of suicide. On Tuesday evening, the farmer Alfred Bernard Jr. from Old Mullins River Road in Stank Creek accidentally shot himself. He was found dead sometime after 5 p.m. with gunshot wounds to the body. According to the police report, Bernard Jr. was exiting his vehicle when he allegedly picked up his loaded shotgun. The gun fired and he was shot dead. Police are investigating. Shane Harris is no stranger to the law. In fact, his most recent brush on record was in April 2018 when he was arrested and charged for his involvement in an armed robbery in Belmopan. Harris was subsequently released on bail on the condition that he cannot be on the streets between 8:30 p.m. and 6 a.m. On the night of November 30th, 2019, he was picked up by police at a residence on Armadillo Street on the premise that he was violating his bail conditions. Despite telling the arresting officers that he was not on the streets and that he knew the terms on which he was freed, Harris was taken into custody and locked down for the entire weekend before being released without charge on Monday. It is a common practice that's done by officers across the country. Well, Harris sued the department earlier this week. Justice Westman James ruled that, in fact, he was arrested and falsely imprisoned. The Supreme Court has granted him damages and other awards in the claim, and according to attorney Dickie Bradley, the decision sets the precedent that holding persons for 48 hours in a prison cell without charges being brought is unlawful.
It is an elementary and straightforward matter, but it is an extremely important legal development for us in Belize. What Judge Westman is saying, having carefully gone over the evidence presented from both sides, looking at the facts of the case, the evidence, and he in fact refers to several laws that have covered these matters, and he found that in that case the police could easily have taken Shane Harris to his house so he could get the copy of his bail order. So he can show that the thing is saying I should not be in the streets after a certain hour. They did not do that. He said that they could have allow him to contact a family member to bring it to the police station. You know, I hear about that. It was not until Monday that they clarified. And of course, another police was kind enough to allow Harris to call his attorney. The judge is saying that in those circumstances, in those facts, based on law all over the democratic world, that Shane Harris was wrongfully arrested. There is no grounds to arrest that man. Shane Harris was imprisoned falsely. It's called in law false imprisonment. There was no grounds on which to keep him imprisoned to violate the right to liberty that he and every Belizeans enjoy.
Michael Fox and Erwin Lanza were the last three captured from 28 inmates who escaped from the Belize Central Prison in October 2020. The men were caught and returned to jail over the weekend and appeared before Senior Magistrate Aretha Ford on Tuesday, where they were charged and sentenced additionally for their escape. In appearing before the court, Fox, who is serving a life sentence for murder, told the court that he escaped because prison director Virgilio Murillo was planning to expose the inmates to COVID-19. Today, we got a reaction from CEO Murillo.
I hate to let it seem as though I am on trial now because of comments being made by escaped prisoners. Escaped prisoners are a serious risk to the public. And I think the focus should always be to try and get them back into custody, because they were sent to prison in the first place for being a danger to the society and for, doing things that they should not have done. I don't want to really and truly get into a back and forth over what I practice around here or what we practice around here, because whatever they mention in court is certainly to try and bail themselves out of the jam that they found themselves in. The prison is a responsible prison, and we will not ever do things that goes contrary to normal procedures. Let's face it, you guys are aware that we had an explosion of COVID-19 in this prison, and in very short order, we had brought that under control after a 21-day lockdown, which they never wanted. You know that we brought it back down to 6 after there was that explosion. So that is what I can say as it relates to that. I want to remind the public that we need to understand who these last 2 inmates were. I am saying to them that even if they were wrongfully convicted, escaping from the prison is not the solution, because I think all of that they try to play out. This is not the first time Fox has escaped from the prison, so that shouldn't be any surprise to the public, because he was in the news before.
President of the Teachers Union weighs in on the reopening of schools. We'll have that story when we come back. The University of Belize has a newly reconstituted Board of Trustees. In December 2020, the Ministry of Education announced new appointments. The minister's representative, Attorney Anthony Sylvester, who is now the board's chairman. Retired Major Lloyd Jones has been elected as the vice chairman and will be representing the interest of the tourism industry. Crescencio Sosa Sr. is also a new member, and he will represent the private sector for industry, while Dr. Yvonne Palma will represent the Ministry of Education. CEO Servila Baiza represents the Ministry of Agriculture, and the private sector for agriculture will be represented by Eccleston Irving. Dr. Daisy Mendez is also on the board as a representative for the Ministry of Health. And the returning members are Luke Palacio for the NTUCB, Dr. June Young for the faculty, Fermin Magana for AtLib, Darlene Vernon for the Alumni Association, Steve Good for the student body, Dr. Fred Shu for the Belize Council of Churches, Clinton Foreman for the National Council for Education, and Dr. Oshaku Tehu Kakshosho for non-governmental and civil society. The newly reconstituted board met on January 22nd, during which the committee expressed its great desire to further the university's development. It's been a little less than a year since the schools were closed countrywide. The new model of learning means parents collect school packages and teachers and students interact virtually. The Ministry of Education decided that schools will remain closed to face-to-face learning until it is deemed safe for students and teachers to return to the classroom. The ministry explained that the strictest possible standards of behavior for all health and well-being must be maintained. And so as distance learning continues, teachers and students still face some challenges. However, BNTU National President Senator Elena Smith explained that the teachers and students continue to work together.
Some of the same concerns remain in terms of, the submission of work from our students, in terms of the access that some of them have, in terms of access for some of the teachers, especially in the rural areas, and a little bit in terms of the extra work, if you will, because they have to be preparing for online plus packages, and so that is a bit more than they would normally be doing, and because some of them don't have adequate training in the use of those platforms, then it creates a bit of a problem for them. But all in all, we've also had feedback that a lot of some teachers are saying that they are happy with the online. They like it much better than the packages, because it gives them a chance to actually see their students and being able to interact with them a little bit more, as opposed to just sending packages. So there have been some positives and some negatives, as we would expect with anything that we do for the first time.
And while distance learning is the safest option for now, the planning has already started for the eventual resumption of face-to-face learning. The Ministry of Education formed the COVID-19 Education Task Force to plan for that safe reopening, aiming for August-September 2021. Its first meeting was held last week, and by the looks of it, the reopening of schools won't happen this school year. BNTU National President Smith explains.
You know that the ministry has put together a task force for education, and that task force had its first meeting last week. So we are right now currently working on those things and to see how it is that we could get to the point where all parties involved, so it includes staff, parents, students, would be at a place where they feel that it's safe enough for all of them to return to the classroom. You know that the ministry had put out a press release some time ago, and they had indicated that it didn't seem possible for this school year, meaning that we are expecting that maybe until September, which would be the other school year. So if that is the case, then it would mean that we will be preparing for September, if that is the case. Yes, cases are going down, but we note that activities are still happening, and we see people still, gathering at various places, still having social events. And so while we are happy that cases are going down, we have to ensure that we continue to maintain a kind of behavior that would keep it that way. And so the Ministry of Health seem to have a benchmark, as to where it's going to be safe for the reopening. So we will, as when I started, continue to be guided by the Ministry of Health, but at the same time we'll be preparing for when that day comes.
It was a crusade led by the BNTU in 2016 that the then government was forced to sign on to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Teachers held an 11-day strike until their demands were met. UNCAC has yet to be fully implemented, and as BNTU president told News 5, the NTUCB will be making sure that the second phase of UNCAC is implemented.
That matter has been discussed, and we have a resolution that we must deal with the matter. We have to write to, we understand it's no longer the AG, it's the Minister for Public Service, to ensure that committee gets its work done, gets activated, and that we see through the other phase of the implementation. So that matter was just discussed over the weekend, and we are going to be writing to, well, the NTSB is going to be writing to the minister to address that matter.
When they were in opposition, the People's United Party heavily criticized the Barrow administration for its nepotism. But the Briceño administration is now attracting similar criticisms. The Belize National Teachers Union has noticed, and President Smith describes the nepotistic appointments and says that only a small group of people are benefiting.
We have been crying and saying that these things should not be happening. That it's not good. It's not good for the country, it's not good for people, because it cannot be that just a small group of people keep benefiting when a party is in government. And we have seen that over and over, that there's a small group who benefits. The wider people are the ones who get the least or who benefit the least, and those are the ones who need it the most. So I have to agree with you that what we have seen so far is showing that nothing has changed in that regard. So while you criticize the other one and say that this is what they were doing, you come and you do the same thing. What difference are you making? How does that make you different from the other one who you have been criticizing? And we have to get to the point, Hippolyte, where we stop this nonsense.
Critics of the BNTU have asked why its national president, Elena Smith, has been silent when it comes to the new government. February 11th will mark 3 months since the People's United Party formed government. The Briceño administration is facing incredible challenges. The economy has yet to make a bounce back. The COVID-19 pandemic lingers. And as PM John Briceño said it, government broke. So is the BNTU, as the watchdog union, keeping a close eye on this administration?
The Belize National Teachers Union was a monster union under the Barrow administration, in terms of that the union was willing to call out the then government and fight and lead wars against corruption and so forth. Is the union prepared to do so? No. They say, Senator Elena, you've been awfully quiet since the PUP won 2 months ago.
We have to understand, Hippolyte, that right now we are at a place where gatherings are limited, and so even if we wanted to take any action against the government, even prior to this election, even last year, we had some issues with the ministry, and we couldn't take any action because of the situation at hand. So we have to understand that. That's one. Secondly, the government, just got elected a few months ago. We are monitoring, and we have been, we gave them a chance for them to meet with us so that we could share with them our concerns, especially the Ministry of Education. Share our concerns with them that we have, that we want them to address. If it is that we don't get those issues addressed, then we have said to them, we will do what we have to do. So this is not where BNTU doesn't want to stand up against this government. It is that the time right now, we cannot do it, but two, we have not gotten to that point yet where we are at an impasse and we must take industrial action.
When we come back, stolen tablets are surfacing on Keat Cocker. The teachers plea for the public not to buy them. Some 3 weeks ago, at the start of the school term in January, close to 100 tablets for distance learning were stolen from Sadie Vernon High School in Belize City. At least 5 persons were captured by street cameras leaving the area with plastic bags used to carry the devices. Close to 50 were recovered, and a relative of one of the students, Lena Gabriel, has been charged for handling stolen goods after she was found in possession of several devices. 41 tablets are still missing, but the school has been tipped off that the tablets are being sold on Key Cocker. Vice Principal Abigail Hoare is appealing to residents not to purchase the stolen devices.
We're going to cut off the access to these tablets, so they will be completely useless to those who are in possession of these devices. At the end of the day, it is the children in this same community, in the entire community of Belize, that has been deprived. So yeah, we have received information that someone who allegedly was arrested or cited as one of the culprits has made some connections in Kikaka, and so we understand that a remainder of these devices are being sold on the island of Kikaka, and we want to appeal to the heart of the people in Kikaka to do what is right. Easy come, easy go, basically, and wealth gained illegally will not prosper the people who are in possession of these things.
Today, the International Office of Migration in Belize signed an implementation agreement with 3 local partners to expand the IOM's migrant hubs in 3 locations. The hubs are being supported to provide more services to migrants to improve their access to information and other services. According to the IOM, translation services, assistance with application forms, and other deliverables will help to reduce barriers for migrants and help to facilitate a safe and orderly migration process through the expansion of the Belmopan hub and the launch of the San Ignacio and Bella Vista funds. The program started back in 2018 when the United States government, through the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, and the U.S. Department of State, funded the program so that migrants can access the services free of cost. Here's more from Diana Locke, the head of the IOM office in Belize.
Having inaugurated our first hub in Belize with CDF in 2018 and seeing the success of this activity, IOM, through the sponsorship of the U.S. government, USAID, and PRM, is now able to sign implementation agreements with partners to partner with Child Development Foundation, Belize Red Cross, Humana People to People to operate migrant hubs through which information will be shared and help to create a safe space for accurate information on regular migration procedures. We will also go a step further to provide services to migrants who qualify for regularization and assist them in transitioning from an irregular state to a regular status in the country. The migrant hubs will also provide assistance and referral support to Belizean returnees, enabling them to reintegrate into life and work in Belize. We're certain that through these migrant hubs, IOM and you, our implementing partners, will be able to assist migrants in overcoming the language and knowledge hurdles to comply with immigration and other procedures, enabling them to remain and work in a regular status in Belize.
After the break, there's a new coach in charge of the female footballers.
If we are only
Wear your mask at all times, keep physical distance when in public, and stay at home unless absolutely necessary. This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Wayne Casimiro has been named the head coach of the women's football team for the Football Federation of Belize. Casimiro is no stranger to the sport. The football athlete turned teacher began his coaching experience back in 1992. And as a sports coordinator, he planned and organized sporting events in the Stann Creek district. The licensed CONCACAF coach led the U17 female national team that competed in the World Cup qualifier in 2019. He holds a degree from the University of Physical Education and has a wealth of experience. As a full-time coach and coach educator advocating for youth development in sports, what are his plans to improve female athletes' performance in football?
The task of the women football department is really to begin to get younger females involved, younger players involved. There are plans in place for us to involve the primary school starting from age 10, 13. These are the areas in which we could basically, the Evo Soccer platform is on for its fourth week now, and what we are doing is the girls receive the ball and they do their drills. So every week before Sunday they have to submit a video of what they are doing. So it's basically allowing them to do individual development, and it is going good. Our aim is to continue to build on that. We follow up on the girls as what it is that they're doing, sending them encouraging videos on our platform so that they are aware that we are keeping tab of what they're doing, and also that and giving them that motivation to keep focused so that they improve individually.
And that's the news. Tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at News 5 Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, and stay safe. Good night.